Summer 1895, Newport, Rhode Island. A palace rises from the Atlantic coastline, 70 rooms, 138,300 square feet, $7 million in construction costs. Sunlight explodes through hand-carved Italian marble, bouncing off 22-karat gold leaf that covers ceilings 3 stories high. But in the basement, a coal-burning power plant devours fuel around the clock, feeding a beast that requires 40 full-time servants just to keep its heart beating. The monthly operating costs exceed $50,000, more than most American families would earn in a lifetime. How long could this arithmetic possibly last? Stand at the gates of the breakers today, and you're confronting American ambition made manifest in limestone and marble. The mansion commands 11 acres of Newport's most coveted coastline, its facade stretching 250 feet across. 4 stories of Italian Renaissance grandeur that makes the neighboring cottages look like garden sheds. Walk through the entrance hall and your eyes climb past towering Corinthian columns toward a ceiling painted by French masters, imported panel by gilded panel across the Atlantic. The Great Hall soars 50 feet overhead. Every surface screams calculated opulence, walls of rare Capellino marble from quarries that supplied ancient Rome. Fireplace mantels carved from single blocks of Algerian onyx, bronze fixtures cast in Paris foundries. The morning room features platinum leaf ceiling decorations. Platinum. In 1895, platinum cost more than gold. This wasn't a home. This was a declaration of war in America's status arms race. The numbers become almost obscene when you catalog them. 7 bathrooms with solid silver fixtures. 27 fireplaces, each a masterwork of imported European craftsmanship. The dining room seats 34 beneath chandeliers containing thousands of hand-cut crystals. The billiard room required an entire canstone quarry in France to supply its walls. Cornelius Vanderbilt II commissioned 27 different artisan workshops across Europe, coordinating an international supply chain that would impress modern logistics managers. Contemporary accounts describe construction crews numbering in the hundreds: stone cutters, carpenters, plasterers, gilders, electricians installing cutting-edge technology. The library's ceiling took 12 artisans 8 months to complete. 8 months for one ceiling. But here's what the society pages didn't publish. The breakers consumed resources at a rate that bordered on thermodynamic impossibility. The coal-burning plant in the basement, necessary to power early electrical systems, heat distribution, and water pressure, required daily deliveries measured in tons. The kitchen staff alone numbered 14 people during the summer season, working in a facility that featured industrial-scale ovens, ice storage rooms, and separate spaces for preparing meat, fish, pastries, and vegetables. The house demanded 40 permanent staff members, expanding to 60 during the social season. Each servant required housing, feeding, uniforms, wages. Each of those 27 fireplaces needed daily cleaning, wood delivery, ash removal. Each crystal chandelier required weekly washing by hand, piece by individual piece. And the breakers only served as a summer cottage. The Vanderbilts occupied it perhaps 10 weeks per year. The arithmetic was already impossible in 1895, but Cornelius Vanderbilt II wasn't thinking about arithmetic. He was thinking about legacy, about cementing his family's position atop America's social pyramid. He was thinking about building something so magnificent that his grandfather's name, the Commodore, the brutal railroad baron who built the family fortune, would be remembered not for ruthlessness, but for cultural patronage. He didn't know it yet, but he was building a monument to an economic model that was already dying. How did a man worth $200 million, the equivalent of $7 billion today, create something his own children couldn't afford to maintain? Cornelius Vanderbilt II inherited more than money. He inherited expectation. His grandfather, Commodore Cornelius Vanderbilt, died in 1877 as the wealthiest man in America, having built a railroad empire through methods that made J.P. Morgan look genteel. The Commodore famously declared, "Law What do I care about law? Ain't I got the power? He left $95 million, an almost incomprehensible sum representing 1/87th of the entire U.S. GDP, to one son, William Henry Vanderbilt. William doubled the fortune in 8 years, then died of a stroke in 1885, dividing the empire among his 4 sons. Cornelius II, as eldest, received the largest share and the heaviest burden, maintaining the family's social position during America's Gilded Age, when industrial titans competed through conspicuous consumption with the intensity of military campaigns. By the early 1890s, that competition had reached fever pitch in Newport. This sliver of Rhode Island coastline had become the summer battlefield where America's wealthiest families demonstrated their cultural supremacy. Mrs. Astor's Beechwood set the standard. The Astors, the Belmonts, the Golets, each family commissioned increasingly elaborate summer cottages that mocked the very word. Then Cornelius II's first Newport house, the original Breakers, burned to the ground in November 1892. He saw opportunity in the ashes. Cornelius hired Richard Morris Hunt, the first American educated at Paris's École des Beaux-Arts, and the architect who had designed the pedestal for the Statue of Liberty. Hunt's assignment: create something unprecedented, something that would dwarf every other summer residence in Newport, something that would establish beyond dispute that the Vanderbilts represented American aristocracy. Hunt designed a 70-room Italian Renaissance palace inspired by the 16th century Genoese palaces of Genoa, but this wouldn't be mere imitation. Hunt specified materials and craftsmanship that exceeded even the Italian originals. The mansion would be steel-framed, revolutionary for residential construction, making it effectively fireproof. It would feature the most advanced mechanical systems available: forced air heating, salt and fresh water plumbing, coal-generated electricity, even early telephone systems. Construction began in 1893, 2 years. Hunt demanded completion in 2 years for the 1895 summer season. The logistics alone boggled the mind. Entire rooms were fabricated in Europe, disassembled, shipped across the Atlantic, and reassembled in Newport. The library ceiling panels were created in Paris by Allard & Sons, carved from rare African wood, painted, gilded, then carefully numbered for reassembly. The columns in the Great Hall, 33 feet tall, carved from solid marble, were quarried in Italy, rough cut on site, then finished by Italian craftsmen who traveled to Newport specifically for that purpose. The bill of materials reads like a geological survey of European luxury. Can limestone from France, various marbles from Italy and Algeria, alabaster from England, mahogany from Africa, rare hardwoods from tropical forests. Hunt employed separate contractors for stonework, metalwork, woodwork, painting, gilding, and landscaping. The workforce at peak construction exceeded 200 men. Cornelius approved every extravagance: the platinum leaf, the silver bathroom fixtures, the custom-woven silk wall coverings, the hand-carved Renaissance furniture reproductions. When Hunt expressed concern about costs, Cornelius reportedly replied, "Spare no expense." He didn't. Final construction costs reached approximately $7 million, roughly $240 million in 2025 dollars. But that figure doesn't capture the true investment. The mansion required custom-built infrastructure, reinforced foundations to support unprecedented weight on coastal soil, an independent power generation facility, a water tank system with pressure mechanisms, a revolutionary heat distribution network using steam pipes embedded in walls. The Breakers opened in August 1895. Newport society arrived for a grand tour, walking through rooms that represented the pinnacle of Gilded Age achievement. Newspapers published breathless descriptions. The architectural press declared it Hunt's masterpiece. Cornelius II stood in his great hall, surrounded by marble and gold, hosting America's elite. He had achieved his objective. The Vanderbilt name now meant not just wealth but taste, culture, sophistication. His children would inherit not merely money, but social position that seemed unassailable. He didn't see the trap he'd built. The breakers wasn't just expensive to construct, it was expensive to exist. Every day, every hour, whether the family occupied it or not, the house demanded resources. And the economic forces that had enabled its construction industrial monopolies, absence of income tax, unlimited inheritance, weak labor regulations were already facing challenges that would transform American society within a generation. The palace was complete. The bills were just beginning. Let's do the arithmetic the Vanderbilts preferred not to discuss. 40 full-time servants at the breakers, expanding to 60 during the 10-week summer season. Each required wages, housing, food, uniforms, and management. The breakers maintained separate male and female servant quarters on the 3rd and 4th floors. A complex hierarchy requiring butlers, footmen, chauffeurs, ladies' maids, housemaids, laundry maids, kitchen staff, groundskeepers, and maintenance workers. The butler's annual salary, approximately $1,000, multiply across the staff hierarchy, and the annual wage bill alone reached $30,000 before accounting for housing and feeding this small army. The kitchen's daily food costs during the season reached $200 per day for a family of 5 and their guests. Now consider maintenance. 27 fireplaces meant daily cleaning, ash removal, wood or coal delivery, chimney sweeping, and mantle polishing. The marble floors required specialized cleaning to avoid etching the stone, a full-time job for multiple housemaids using precisely mixed solutions. The gold leaf ceilings needed periodic restoration from salt air corrosion. Gold doesn't tarnish, but the Atlantic environment degraded the adhesive beneath. The crystal chandeliers presented a particular nightmare. Each chandelier contained hundreds to thousands of individual crystals, suspended on delicate wiring. Proper maintenance required complete dismantling annually, washing each crystal by hand, checking all metal connections for corrosion, and reassembly. This process took teams of workers weeks to complete throughout the house. Then there's the power plant. The breakers consumed coal at extraordinary rates. The basement boiler system provided heat, hot water, electricity generation, and pressure for the plumbing systems. During winter, when the house sat largely empty, skeleton crews still maintained minimum operations to prevent pipe freezing and system deterioration. Coal deliveries occurred weekly during operation, daily during peak winter cold, amounting to hundreds of tons annually. Early electricity was astoundingly expensive. The breaker's generator system represented cutting-edge technology, requiring specialized maintenance and constant fuel. The lighting alone hundreds of electric fixtures throughout. 70 rooms consumed power at rates that would horrify modern efficiency standards. Water presented another constant expense. The breakers maintained both fresh and salt water plumbing systems. The salt water system pumped ocean water for toilet flushing, a conservation measure that seems quaint now but required dedicated pumps, pipes, and maintenance. The fresh water system featured pressure tanks and distribution networks that needed constant monitoring to prevent leaks in a corrosive salt air environment. Contemporary estimates suggest monthly operating costs during the summer season reached $50,000, equivalent to roughly $1.7 million annually in modern terms. For a vacation home used 10 weeks per year. But the true cost wasn't measured in dollars. It was measured in human hours. The servant hierarchy at the breakers was a small feudal society. The butler managed male staff, the housekeeper managed female staff, and between them sat rigid protocols governing everything from meal times to which servants could use which staircases. Servants rose before 5 a.m. to prepare the house before family members woke. They worked until after midnight when the last dinner guest departed and the final dishes were cleaned. Housemaids climbed the service stairs narrow, utilitarian passages hidden behind walls carrying coal scuttles, water pitchers, chamber pots, laundry, and meal trays. In summer, they worked in stifling heat from the basement boilers. In winter, The service areas remained barely heated while they maintained comfort in the family spaces. The kitchen operated under conditions that would violate every modern safety regulation. Multiple coal-fired ovens raised temperatures above 100 degrees Fahrenheit. The head chef imported from France ruled with absolute authority over a hierarchy of sous chefs, pastry specialists, and kitchen maids who worked 16-hour days during parties and events. Groundskeepers maintained the 11-acre property in magazine-ready condition despite salt spray, wind, and sandy soil. The landscape architect Frederick Law Olmsted Jr. had designed the grounds, specifying plant varieties that required constant replacement due to harsh coastal conditions. And this was merely one Vanderbilt property. Cornelius II maintained a Manhattan townhouse, a country estate called Oakland Farm, and previously the original Breakers. His brothers maintained similar portfolios. The family's total property maintenance costs easily exceeded several $100,000 annually, perhaps $10 million in modern terms, before considering personal expenses, business operations, or charitable contributions. The servants saw the reality behind the guilt. They saw the constant repairs, the salt-corroded fixtures, the marble cracking from foundation settlement, the painted ceilings damaged by humidity. They saw the enormous effort required to maintain an illusion of effortless grandeur. And they were watching something else, the world changing. By 1900, labor movements were gaining strength. The servants who made Gilded Age access possible were beginning to demand reasonable hours, better wages, and basic dignities. Simultaneously, the industrial monopolies that generated Vanderbilt wealth faced increasing legal challenges. Trust busting had begun. Progressive taxation was being debated. The social contract that allowed unlimited accumulation without obligation was fraying. The Breakers represented a high water mark of American inequality, a moment when a single family could command resources equivalent to a small city's budget for private comfort. But the tide was already turning. In 1899, Cornelius Vanderbilt II suffered a massive stroke. He would never fully recover. Management of the Breakers passed to his wife Alice, who faced a question the architects had never considered. How do you maintain a palace when the empire starts to crumble? Cornelius Vanderbilt II died in September 1899, just 4 years after the Breakers' completion. He was 55 years old, his health destroyed by the stress of managing the family empire. He left behind a fortune estimated at $73 million, substantial, but already diminished from his father's peak. His widow, Alice Gwynne Vanderbilt, inherited the Breakers along with the impossible mathematics of maintaining it. Alice tried. Through determination and careful management, she continued operating the house, maintaining the summer season social calendar, preserving the family's Newport presence. But she was navigating an increasingly hostile economic environment for dynastic wealth. In 1913, Congress passed the 16th Amendment, establishing federal income tax. For the first time, the government claimed a percentage of annual earnings. The initial rates seemed modest, 7% on income over $500,000, but the precedent was set. Wealth would now be taxed during accumulation, not just at death. Then came World War I. The conflict disrupted European supply chains, making imported luxuries scarce and expensive. More crucially, it accelerated social changes that made conspicuous consumption seem unpatriotic. The era of grand balls and lavish parties faced cultural backlash. Displaying wealth while American soldiers died in France carried different optics than it had in 1895. The real blow landed in 1916, the federal estate tax. When wealthy Americans died, the government would now claim a percentage of inherited wealth. The rate started at 10% on estates over $5 million, exactly the tier the Vanderbilts occupied, and would climb dramatically in subsequent years. Suddenly, the Vanderbilt strategy of accumulation and generational transfer faced systemic taxation at both ends. The economic model that had built the Breakers, industrial monopoly profits, untaxed inheritance, minimal operational regulations, was being dismantled by progressive reforms. The breakers became increasingly burdensome. Alice continued summering there through the 1920s, but the scale of operations gradually contracted. Staff numbers dropped. Maintenance was deferred. Sections of the house were closed off during periods of non-use. The monthly bills remained staggering even with cutbacks. Other Newport cottages faced worse fates. Dozens were sold, demolished, or abandoned. The Astor Belmont and Gilded properties began disappearing from the landscape. The summer colony that had represented American aristocracy was dissolving under the weight of its own excess. Alice died in 1934, leaving the breakers to her daughter Gladys Countess Csikszentmihalyi. By then, America was deep in the Great Depression. The arithmetic had become utterly impossible. Properties worth millions couldn't find buyers. Mansions were demolished rather than pay property taxes and maintenance costs. Newport's golden age was over. Gladys faced a brutal decision. The breakers, unoccupied for most of the year, consumed resources the family could no longer justify. Property taxes alone ran to tens of thousands of dollars annually. The house needed major restoration. Decades of salt air had corroded systems and damaged finishes. Estimates for proper maintenance exceeded $100,000 annually, roughly $2 million in current dollars. The family considered demolition. Seriously, the limestone and marble could be salvaged and sold. The property could be subdivided for development. Dozens of comparable Newport mansions had already met this fate, but Gladys hesitated. Perhaps she felt loyalty to her father's memory. Perhaps she recognized historical significance. Perhaps she simply couldn't bring herself to destroy something so magnificent. In 1948, she made a different choice, one that would save the breakers, but acknowledge the fundamental truth. No private family could afford to maintain it anymore. She leased the breakers to the Preservation Society of Newport County for $1 per year. Today, the breakers receives over 400,000 visitors annually. They pay admission fees, walk through roped-off rooms, and photograph the marble halls where Vanderbilt guests once waltzed. The house operates as a museum preserved, protected, but fundamentally transformed from its original purpose. The Preservation Society manages what the Vanderbilts could not: the economics of maintenance. Admission fees, gift shop sales, event rentals, and endowment income fund ongoing restoration. Modern museum operations employ conservation specialists, historians, and tour guides, a different kind of staff hierarchy than the butlers and housemaids of 1895, but an infrastructure nonetheless. The Vanderbilt family retained ownership until 1972, when they sold the breakers to the Preservation Society for $365,000, a fraction of the original construction cost. Adjusted for inflation, a pittance. The sale acknowledged reality. The house survived precisely because it stopped being a private residence. Walk through the breakers now, and you're witnessing a peculiar resurrection. The mansion exists in perpetual summer of 1895, frozen at the moment of its greatest glory. The great hall ceiling still glows with gold leaf, restored, preserved, protected by museum climate controls. The dining room still displays Newport's grandest space, but no meals are served. The library's African wood ceiling still astounds behind velvet ropes that keep visitors at a distance. This is the legacy of Gilded Age excess. Magnificent architecture preserved as museum exhibits, their original purpose rendered impossible by the economic reforms their very existence helped provoke. The breakers helped demonstrate why America needed progressive taxation, estate taxes, labor protections, and trust busting. Cornelius Vanderbilt II wanted immortality through architecture. He got it, but not as he imagined. The breakers endures not as a family legacy, but as a public monument to an era when American wealth reached levels of concentration that even a democracy couldn't sustain. The palace survives, the empire that built it does not. And perhaps that's precisely as it should be. Stand in the Great Hall today, looking up at the same gold leaf ceiling that Cornelius Vanderbilt II saw in 1895. And consider, the house has lasted 130 years not because it was built to last, but because we transformed it into something its creator never intended. A shared inheritance, accessible to anyone with the price of admission. The Breakers failed as a private home precisely because it succeeded too well as a monument. And in that failure lies a question that still resonates. What is wealth actually for? Who should it serve? And what happens when the arithmetic of private excess finally overwhelms even the largest fortune? The gold leaf provides no answers. It just reflects the light, indifferent to the questions we bring to it.